Hi, everyone. Welcome to English Today Journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get daily English tips and tricks. Today, we're going to talk about something very important for advanced English learners: listening. At the C2 level, listening should be exciting, not scary. One thing that often makes English listening difficult is speed. Native speakers talk very fast. They drop sounds, blend words together, and use lots of contractions. When you were learning at beginner or intermediate levels, this might have felt confusing or even overwhelming. But at C2, you want to reach the stage where fast English is not a problem but actually something fun. You want to enjoy the rhythm of real conversations, just like you enjoy a song you love. A great way to practice is to start by listening at a normal speed first. Listen carefully and try to catch as much as possible. Then, when you are ready, increase the speed slightly. On YouTube or in podcast apps, you can play audio a little faster than normal. At first, it will feel a bit challenging, but your brain is like a runner training with weights on their ankles. At first, it is hard, but when the weights are removed, you move quickly and effortlessly. This is exactly what happens when you train your ears with faster English. Real conversations will feel easy and natural after enough practice. But listening isn't just about understanding words. It's also about training your brain to think in English. The more you listen, the more your mind begins to adopt English phrases, rhythms, and even humor. Over time, you stop translating in your head. Instead, your mind responds naturally because it already knows the patterns. Listening creates a mental database of English, and this database helps with speaking, writing, reading, and every other language skill. Without strong listening skills, advanced English becomes harder to use naturally. So, how should you practice listening every day at the C2 level? The answer is simple: variety and consistency. You need to make sure your ears hear English in different forms every day. For example, you could listen to a podcast in the morning, a news broadcast at lunch, and a comedy show in the evening. Mix serious content with fun content, and try listening to different accents and styles. This diversity trains your brain to understand English in many situations, just like a professional athlete trains for all kinds of conditions. But don't just listen passively while scrolling your phone or doing chores. Dedicate some time to focus fully on English. Break down what you hear. Try shadowing the speakers. Repeat what they say while listening. Analyze their pronunciation, tone, and rhythm. Think of this as going to the gym for your ears. If you always lift the same light weight, your muscles don't grow. But if you challenge yourself with heavier weights, you get stronger. Similarly, when you push yourself with slightly faster or more difficult English, your listening skills improve dramatically. At the advanced level, listening becomes a key tool for fluency. The more input you get, the more natural your output becomes. Eventually, understanding English, responding in conversations, and even thinking in English will all feel effortless. Remember, the goal is not just to understand English, but to enjoy it, to feel confident when others speak fast, and to make English your second nature. Train consistently, mix different types of listening, and challenge yourself a little every day. That is the path to mastering advanced English listening. When you challenge yourself with heavier or different weights in listening practice, your skills grow stronger, just like muscles in the gym. But I want to leave you with an important idea about listening at the C2 level. Listening isn't just a skill, it's part of your identity as an English speaker. When you can listen at this level, you are no longer outside the circle struggling to understand. Instead, you are fully inside the conversation. You laugh at the same jokes, react at the same time, and understand the same cultural references. That is the real difference between being advanced in English and truly mastering English. If you keep pushing yourself, stay curious, and embrace variety in your listening practice, your skills will eventually reach a point where English feels like second nature. You won't have to think about translating in your head or slowing down the conversation. You will understand naturally, and responding in English will feel effortless. This is the kind of mastery every language learner dreams of, and it's possible with consistent effort and a willingness to step out of your comfort zone. Now that we've focused on listening, let's shift to another important skill: speaking. Speaking is the skill that most learners think of when they imagine true fluency. At the C2 level, speaking isn't just about producing sentences quickly. You've already reached a stage where you can explain ideas, take part in discussions, and talk about almost any topic confidently. But at this advanced level, the focus shifts to refinement and subtlety. It's about sounding not only correct, but also natural and sophisticated. You start thinking about how you say things, not just what you say. Speaking at C2 is like playing a musical instrument at a concert level. It's not enough to hit the right notes. You also shape the sound, interpret the music, and create emotion. In the same way, advanced English speakers don't just string words together. They shape their speech, choose the right tone, and match their rhythm to the situation. Whether you're having a casual chat with friends, giving a formal presentation, or participating in a debate, your goal is to adapt your style and voice to each situation. This is what makes your English sound polished, natural, and confident. Many people think fluency means talking fast, with words flowing without pause. But real fluency is more than speed. True fluency is about speaking comfortably and in control. It's about using pauses naturally, emphasizing words when needed, and letting your intonation match the message you want to give. When you master these subtleties, your speech doesn't just convey information, it expresses emotion, builds connection, and communicates ideas effectively. At the C2 level, every conversation becomes an opportunity to refine your speaking, experiment with style, and express yourself naturally. Your goal is to make English feel like a part of who you are. You're no longer just learning English. You're living it, using it in ways that feel effortless and expressive. By combining this with consistent listening practice, your overall language skills will continue to improve in a balanced and powerful way. So remember, listening builds your understanding, speaking builds your expression, and together they make English feel like a natural extension of yourself. Keep practicing, stay curious, and challenge yourself. The more you do, the closer you get to mastery, where listening and speaking in English is no longer work, it's joy. At the C2 level, speaking in English is no longer about worrying whether your grammar is correct. Instead, it's about how to make your message powerful, elegant, and persuasive. You start thinking about how to choose words and expressions that fit the moment perfectly. Do you want to sound casual or formal, playful or serious, direct or diplomatic? This kind of flexibility is what shows you have truly mastered English speaking. One of the best ways to develop this skill is to practice speaking in different contexts. Many advanced learners get stuck in one style. For example, some can talk well with friends in casual conversations, but they struggle when asked to give a formal speech. Others may speak fluently in professional or formal settings but feel awkward when chatting informally. To reach C2, you need to move smoothly between these different registers. Here's a simple exercise you can try. Take a short story, maybe something that happened to you recently. First, tell it casually, like you're talking with a friend. Then, retell the same story as if you are presenting it to an academic audience, using more formal language and structured sentences. Finally, try telling it as a storyteller entertaining children, using vivid words, expressive voice, and rhythm. Notice how your vocabulary, rhythm, and tone change in each version. This kind of flexibility is a hallmark of a highly advanced speaker. Another important aspect of advanced speaking is nuance. Nuance is about the small details that give words extra meaning or emotion. You can create nuance by choosing one word over another, stressing one syllable, pausing at the right moment, or adding humor or irony. For example, think about the phrase, "That's interesting." If you say it with a flat tone, it just sounds neutral. If you say it with rising intonation, it shows curiosity. If you slow down and use an ironic tone, it can mean you're not impressed. Nuance gives your speech life, personality, and meaning, and at the C2 level, you want to play with these tools freely. At this stage, another essential skill is persuasion. You want to be able to influence people, make your arguments convincing, and guide the conversation effectively. Advanced speakers don't just express ideas. They can inspire action, change opinions, or make listeners see things in a new way. This skill comes from combining clear grammar, accurate vocabulary, and confident delivery with subtle tools like emphasis, tone, and word choice. To practice persuasion, try explaining your opinion on a topic to different audiences. Speak first to someone who disagrees with you, then to someone who is neutral, and finally to someone who already supports your view. Notice how you change your tone, word choice, and approach to match each audience. This flexibility, combined with listening skills and nuanced expression, is what makes C2 level speakers stand out. At the C2 level, speaking becomes an art form. It's not just about communicating ideas. It's about shaping those ideas, expressing emotions, and creating connections. The more you practice different contexts, explore nuance, and refine your persuasive skills, the more natural and confident your English will become. Your speech will feel effortless, expressive, and impactful. This is the kind of mastery that turns English from a learned skill into a natural part of who you are, allowing you to communicate like a native speaker in any situation. At the C2 level, speaking English clearly and persuasively is extremely important, especially if you use English in professional or academic settings. It's not just about sounding correct. It's about making your ideas compelling and easy to follow. One excellent exercise to improve this skill is to practice giving a mini speech on a topic that matters to you. Choose something you care about and try to persuade your listener. Use connectors like, on the other hand, it could be argued that, nevertheless, or to a certain extent to link your ideas smoothly. Build your point step by step, give examples to support them, and finish with a strong conclusion. This exercise not only improves your speaking, but also helps you become a better thinker in English, because you are organizing your ideas logically while expressing them clearly. Another skill that becomes very important at this level is spontaneity. In real conversations, you often face unexpected questions, interruptions, or sudden changes in topic. To handle this naturally, you need to practice improvisation. Don't just prepare speeches in advance. Try thinking aloud in English. For example, pick a random object near you, maybe a pen, a coffee mug, or a book, and speak about it for 2 minutes without stopping. Describe it, tell a story about it, explain why it might be important. The goal is to train your brain to keep producing language even when you haven't prepared, which is exactly what happens in real-life conversations. This kind of practice builds confidence and fluency, so you can respond naturally, no matter what comes up. One common challenge for advanced learners is that they can sound correct but not natural. Their sentences may be grammatically perfect, but the rhythm may feel slightly off. Sometimes their word choice is too formal, or they pause in places where a native speaker wouldn't. The solution to this is shadowing. Shadowing is when you take recordings of native speakers, especially in the style of speech you want to improve, and repeat what they say, copying not just the words but also their intonation, pauses, and emotion. Even practicing for just 5 minutes a day will help your speech gain a natural rhythm. Over time, your mouth and brain start to learn the flow of English, and you stop needing to translate in your head. At the C2 level, vocabulary also becomes extremely important. It's no longer just about knowing the words. You want to choose the right word for the right moment, the word that carries exactly the nuance you intend. This allows you to be precise, persuasive, and expressive. When combined with strong listening skills, shadowing practice, improvisation exercises, and structured mini-speeches, your speaking becomes not only correct but natural, fluent, and impactful. You start to sound like someone who has truly internalized English, someone who can think, speak, and even persuade in the language effortlessly. The key is consistency. Practicing a variety of skills every day, listening, speaking, shadowing, improvising, and expanding vocabulary, creates a strong foundation. Every small effort builds on the last, gradually turning English into a language that feels completely natural, no matter the context. By training this way, you not only improve your communication skills, but also gain the confidence to participate fully in any conversation, whether casual, professional, or academic. At the C2 level, vocabulary becomes an area where you can really shine. By now, you already know thousands of words, but it's no longer about just knowing words. It's about precision and variety. Instead of always saying good, you can choose words like excellent, outstanding, remarkable, or brilliant. Depending on the context, instead of always saying bad, you can say awful, unpleasant, dreadful, or subpar. The same goes for idiomatic expressions. Expressions like to cut corners, to go the extra mile, or to be on the same page are powerful tools, but the key is knowing when to use them. Using the right words and phrases at the right moment makes your speech colorful, engaging, and natural. Another essential skill at this level is storytelling. Humans are natural storytellers, and being able to tell a story well in English makes you sound both fluent and charismatic. A strong story has a clear structure, a beginning that sets the scene, a middle with tension or conflict, and an ending with resolution. You can practice telling stories about your own life, inventing stories, or even retelling news articles in your own words. Focus on using descriptive language, creating suspense, and bringing your listener into your world. When you do this effectively, people don't just listen to your English, they listen to you. Your words become engaging, your voice carries personality, and your ideas are memorable. At the C2 level, the emotional side of speaking becomes just as important as the technical side. Confidence is critical. You might already have the skills, but nerves can still make you hesitate, forget words, or sound less fluent than you actually are. The solution is exposure. The more you speak, the less intimidating English becomes. Join discussions, find language exchange partners, or even record yourself speaking and listen back. At first, you might cringe when hearing mistakes, but over time, you will notice how much smoother and more confident your speech becomes. That confidence is what makes your fluency truly shine. Another factor that helps advanced speakers is an awareness of register, which is the level of formality in your speech. At this level, you can adjust your words, tone, and style depending on the situation. For example, casual conversations with friends require relaxed, simple language, while academic or professional discussions need precise, polished vocabulary. Being aware of register ensures that your speech is appropriate, effective, and natural in any context. By combining precise vocabulary, idiomatic expressions, storytelling, confidence, and register awareness, you begin to speak English with a level of sophistication that is rare even among advanced learners. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to express yourself clearly, persuasively, and naturally. You are no longer just constructing sentences. You are communicating ideas, emotions, and personality through English. This is the stage where language becomes an extension of yourself, where fluency feels effortless, and where you can engage, persuade, and inspire with the words you choose. Consistency is key. Practicing all these skills daily, vocabulary, storytelling, improvisation, persuasion, shadowing, and register awareness, gradually builds mastery. Over time, your confidence grows, your natural rhythm emerges, and English becomes something you don't just know. It becomes a natural part of how you think, speak, and connect with the world. At the C2 level, one of the most important skills is being able to move smoothly between registers. Register is the level of formality or style you use depending on the situation. For example, in a job interview, you use formal and polite English. With friends, you might use slang, idioms, and a relaxed tone. When speaking to children, you simplify your language and use more expression to keep them engaged. Being able to switch between these styles shows not just fluency, but also cultural understanding. It shows you know the social rules of English, not just the words. It's also important to remember that speaking at the C2 level is not about perfection. Even native speakers hesitate, repeat themselves, or forget words sometimes. The difference is that they keep speaking confidently. At this level, your goal should not be to impress people with flawless English, but to connect with them. Focus on expressing your ideas clearly, naturally, and engagingly. If you do that, your fluency will grow naturally and people will enjoy talking to you because your English feels genuine and confident. To develop this kind of fluency, make speaking a daily habit. Don't wait for the perfect opportunity to practice. Create opportunities yourself. Talk to yourself in English, have conversations with others, record yourself, and listen back to notice areas for improvement. Shadow native speakers. Copy their rhythm and intonation, and practice storytelling. Practice persuading someone on a topic you care about, and experiment with using idioms naturally. Play with different tones and expressions, explore humor and irony, and try switching registers depending on the situation. The more you practice, the more flexible and natural your English will become. Over time, speaking in English will stop feeling like a challenge. Eventually, you reach a stage where you're not thinking about grammar, vocabulary, or sentence structure. You are simply communicating. English flows out of you as easily as your first language. That is the true power of C2 speaking, and that is the level we want to help you reach. But advanced English is not just about speaking and listening. At the C2 level, reading becomes equally important. Reading is the key to expanding your vocabulary, deepening your cultural knowledge, and developing critical thinking skills. While at earlier levels, reading is often about understanding the main idea, guessing the meaning of words from context, and answering comprehension questions. At the advanced level, reading becomes a tool for growth. You start to notice subtle shades of meaning, explore complex sentence structures, and encounter words and expressions that make your own speaking and writing richer. Reading also exposes you to ideas, perspectives, and ways of thinking that allow you to sound educated, sophisticated, and fluent when you speak or write. In short, at C2, English is not just a language you know. It becomes a language you think, speak, and understand deeply. Speaking, listening, and reading all work together to make your communication natural, confident, and flexible. By practicing consistently, experimenting with style and register, and exploring reading at a deeper level, you'll not only reach fluency, you will master English, making it feel like your own language. At the C2 level, reading in English is no longer just about understanding the main idea or answering simple comprehension questions. Instead, it becomes a deep, analytical skill. You learn to notice tone, recognize subtle shifts in meaning, identify rhetorical strategies, appreciate literary devices, and connect what you read to broader cultural and intellectual ideas. Reading is no longer only about understanding. It is about interpreting, evaluating, and enjoying the richness of English in all its forms. The types of texts you read at this stage are also different. Textbooks or simplified articles are no longer enough. To challenge yourself, you should read authentic, complex material. This includes novels, essays, opinion pieces in major newspapers, academic research articles, speeches, and even poetry. Each type of text develops different skills. Novels help you understand story structure, character dialogue, and descriptive language. Essays train you to follow arguments and counterarguments. Research articles teach you to read dense, technical language carefully. Poetry introduces rhythm, metaphor, and ambiguity, pushing you to notice language on a deeper, more artistic level. By reading across these forms, you expose yourself to the full spectrum of English and steadily move toward reading mastery. How you approach a text also changes at this level. In earlier stages, you might have read word by word, translating in your head, or skimmed quickly just to find the main idea. At C2, you move flexibly between different reading modes depending on your goal. Sometimes you skim a text to get the overall sense. Sometimes you slow down to study a paragraph carefully. Sometimes you pause to notice how a single word or phrase changes the meaning. This flexibility is what allows you to read with power and precision. For example, imagine you are reading a political article. Skimming lets you understand the general argument, but close reading reveals subtleties like the writer's bias, the metaphors they use to influence opinion, or the way they structure paragraphs to strengthen their argument. At this level, you are no longer just absorbing information. You are analyzing it, questioning it, and understanding the writer's techniques. You can see not only what is being said, but how it is being said and why. This advanced reading skill also expands your vocabulary and cultural knowledge. When you encounter new words or idiomatic expressions in context, they become part of your active vocabulary. You notice how authors use tone, style, and nuance to create meaning, which then informs your own speaking and writing. By reading widely and critically, you build a mental library of phrases, expressions, and ideas that you can draw on naturally in conversation or writing. At C2, reading is no longer a passive activity. It becomes a tool for thinking, analyzing, and understanding English at a deeper level. Every text you read gives you the chance to expand your mind, refine your language skills, and connect with ideas that shape not just English, but the world. By combining careful reading with listening, speaking, and writing practice, you develop the kind of complete language mastery that makes English feel effortless and natural. At the C2 level, reading in English is about much more than just understanding words. It shows that you understand communication in English, how ideas are expressed, how arguments are built, and how meaning is conveyed beyond the literal words. One important skill is recognizing tone, which is the writer's attitude toward the topic or the audience. At this level, you should be able to detect whether the writer is serious, ironic, hopeful, angry, playful, or skeptical. Tone is often hidden in subtle details, not in the dictionary meaning of the words. It appears in the style, the choice of adjectives, the rhythm of sentences, and the use of exaggeration or understatement. For example, consider this sentence: "Of course, the government's new plan will definitely solve all our problems, just like the last one did." If you look only at the words, it sounds positive. But the tone is sarcastic, suggesting the writer doesn't actually believe the plan will work. At the C2 level, being able to catch these subtle signals is essential because tone makes reading authentic and meaningful. Without noticing it, you may miss the writer's real intention, humor, or critique. Another important skill is understanding idiomatic and figurative language. Reading is one of the best ways to naturally absorb these expressions. Writers, especially in literature and journalism, use metaphors, similes, idioms, and cultural references to convey ideas vividly. If you only focus on the literal meaning, you miss the richness of the language. For example, if a character in a novel says, "He finally kicked the bucket," you need to know this doesn't mean he literally kicked something, it means he died. Or if an article says, "The new policy is a double-edged sword," you should understand it means the policy has both positive and negative effects. At C2, you don't just memorize these expressions, you notice how they are used, in what context, and with what tone. This makes it much easier to use them naturally in your own speaking and writing. Literature is one of the richest resources for advanced learners. Reading novels, plays, or poems allows you to see how language can create emotion, develop character, and reflect society. For instance, reading Shakespeare, Jane Austen, or modern novels shows how writers use words to build tension, create humor, or convey subtle irony. You start to notice patterns in sentence structure, stylistic choices, and how meaning is layered. This goes far beyond understanding the plot. You begin to analyze and appreciate English as an art form. At this level, you also pay attention to how ideas are connected and arguments are structured. In essays or opinion pieces, you can follow complex reasoning, see how writers use evidence to support claims, and recognize counterarguments. Academic articles or research papers teach you to read dense, technical language carefully, noticing key ideas while filtering supporting details. Poetry and fiction, on the other hand, teach rhythm, nuance, and figurative expression. By reading across different types of texts, you expose yourself to all aspects of English, from formal argumentation to playful creativity. Ultimately, C2 reading is about thinking in English. You don't translate everything into your first language. Instead, you interpret, evaluate, and enjoy the text directly. You start to notice tone, style, and nuance automatically. Idioms and cultural references become natural tools you can use yourself. Literature, journalism, and academic writing become sources of vocabulary, ideas, and insight, helping you speak, write, and think like an advanced English user. By practicing reading this way every day, you develop the mental library of words, phrases, and structures that makes your English feel effortless and fully mastered. At the C2 level, reading English becomes both a challenge and an opportunity. Literature, for example, can feel difficult at first, but it teaches you the roots of English idioms, the rhythm of sentences, and the expressive power of poetic language. Reading modern authors, on the other hand, exposes you to contemporary slang, cultural topics, and how English changes in different contexts. Literature also teaches you to read between the lines. Characters rarely say exactly what they mean. You often need to interpret their tone, actions, and context to uncover hidden messages. This ability to infer meaning is essential at C2 because it allows you to understand English on a deeper, more natural level. Academic reading is another crucial area for advanced learners. Research papers, theoretical essays, and technical manuals often use dense, complex English, long sentences, and specialized vocabulary. At first, these texts can feel overwhelming, but at C2, you don't need to understand every single word. Your goal is to identify the thesis, follow the argument, recognize supporting evidence, and evaluate the logic. A helpful practice is to take a difficult article and summarize it in your own words. Doing this shows not only that you understood the material, but also that you processed it deeply enough to explain it clearly. This skill is exactly what universities and employers look for when they want advanced English proficiency. Another essential skill at this level is critical reading. Critical reading means you don't just accept what you read, you analyze and question it. Ask yourself, what is the writer's purpose? What assumptions are they making? What evidence do they provide? What is missing? Do I agree with their point of view? These questions allow you to think independently and not just absorb information passively. In today's world, where information is everywhere, the ability to evaluate and question texts is more important than ever. Practicing critical reading in English also strengthens your critical thinking in general, making you sharper in both your language skills and your overall reasoning. At the same time, reading at C2 is also about enjoyment. Advanced English reading allows you to experience the beauty of the language itself. You notice how writers create tension, humor, or emotion. You see how authors use style, tone, and rhythm to make their writing compelling. Even when a text is complex, it can be enjoyable once you start to understand the subtleties and hidden meanings. Enjoyment and analysis go hand in hand. The more you understand, the more you appreciate the depth of English. To summarize, C2 reading is a combination of interpretation, analysis, and enjoyment. Literature teaches idioms, rhythm, and cultural insight. Modern texts introduce slang and contemporary ideas. Academic texts train your ability to follow complex arguments, and critical reading sharpens your thinking. Together, these practices allow you not just to read English, but to understand it fully, think in it, and respond confidently, whether in conversation, writing, or professional settings. By reading widely and deeply, you develop a natural fluency and mastery that turns English from a skill into a tool for thinking, expression, and connection with the world. Reading English at the C2 level should never feel like boring homework. Instead, it should feel like a door opening into new worlds. When you read a novel, you step inside someone else's mind and experience their thoughts, feelings, and decisions. When you read history, you travel through time and see events from new perspectives. When you read science, you explore ideas about the universe, nature, or technology. English gives you access to an enormous library of knowledge and imagination, and at C2, you finally have the ability to enjoy it fully. The key is to choose books, articles, or essays that truly interest you, not just ones that feel educational. The more excited you are about what you read, the more naturally your reading skills will grow. A common question advanced learners ask is, should I still use a dictionary? At this level, the answer is yes, but wisely. Don't stop and look up every new word, or you'll lose the flow of reading. Instead, try to guess the meaning from context first. Often, you can understand enough to keep going without the exact definition. But if a word keeps appearing or seems important for understanding the text, then look it up. After that, immediately try to use it in your own sentence. This way, you aren't just collecting definitions, you're actively making new words part of your vocabulary. Reading is also the best way to expand your vocabulary at C2. Why? Because words appear in context. For example, you don't just learn the word resilient. You see it used to describe a community recovering after a disaster or a person overcoming challenges. You learn the feeling of the word, not just the translation. Reading also teaches you subtle differences between similar words. For instance, resilient, strong, and tough all describe someone capable of handling difficulty, but each word carries a slightly different shade of meaning. By seeing words used in many contexts, you begin to understand these nuances naturally. One final tip for C2 reading is to make it interactive. Don't just read silently and move on. Sometimes read aloud to practice pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Keep a reading journal where you write down interesting words, expressions, or ideas. Summarize chapters, note how authors structure their arguments, or even reflect on how the text connects to your own experiences. This active approach makes reading more memorable and helps transfer what you learn into your speaking and writing. At this stage, reading also strengthens your critical thinking skills. You naturally start asking questions like, what is the author's purpose? Are they biased? How do they support their arguments? What assumptions are being made? By reading actively and thoughtfully, you don't just understand English, you think in English, which is the hallmark of true advanced proficiency. In short, C2 reading is about exploration, curiosity, and growth. It is about enjoying the stories, ideas, and knowledge that English unlocks, while also learning to interpret tone, absorb vocabulary, and develop critical thinking. By reading regularly, choosing material you love, using dictionaries wisely, and reflecting on what you read, you develop a deep, flexible, and natural command of English that supports every other skill, speaking, listening, and writing. At this level, reading is not just an activity, it is a gateway to fluency, insight, and confidence. At the C2 level, reading is not just about understanding words, it's about interacting with ideas. One way to do this is by writing down phrases, reflections, or summaries of what you read. Keeping a reading journal or noting interesting expressions helps you remember vocabulary and structures. You can also join book clubs or online discussions in English to share your thoughts. Talking about the books, articles, or essays you read makes the text come alive. The more you engage with it, the more your reading, thinking, and language skills improve. When you embrace reading at C2, you're doing more than learning English, you're joining a global conversation. You're reading the same novels, articles, and research that millions of English speakers around the world read. You begin to understand jokes, arguments, metaphors, and ideas at the same level as native speakers. That is an empowering feeling. Reading gives your English depth, and at this advanced stage, it helps make you not just fluent, but truly literate in the language. Now, let's talk about writing, which is one of the most exciting and challenging skills at the C2 level. By this stage, writing is no longer just about making grammatically correct sentences. It's about expressing yourself clearly, elegantly, logically, and with style. At C2, your writing should not only be correct, but also compelling, able to inform, persuade, or inspire, depending on your goal. Many learners think writing is the most academic skill, and it is true that much C2 writing practice comes from essays, reports, and research papers. But writing at this level can also be creative, personal, and even artistic. The beauty of C2 writing is that you can move easily between different styles. You can write a polite, confident email, a critical and well-structured essay, a story that evokes emotion, or a social media post that feels natural and engaging. This flexibility is a key sign of advanced writing ability. It shows that you not only understand English, but also know how to use it in different contexts and for different purposes. Let's start with academic and formal writing, because this is where many learners are tested. At this stage, you need to be able to structure your writing clearly, develop arguments logically, and support your points with evidence. You should also be able to analyze complex ideas and present them in a way that is easy to follow. Formal writing at C2 is not about using complicated words for the sake of it. Instead, it is about clarity, precision, and sophistication. You should aim for a style that is confident, elegant, and professional. In addition, advanced learners often need to adapt their tone and register. Academic writing is formal and objective. Professional emails are polite but direct. Creative writing is expressive and imaginative. Social media or casual writing can be friendly and engaging. At C2, you have the ability to adjust your style for the situation, which makes your writing not only correct, but also effective and persuasive. Ultimately, C2 writing is about combining accuracy with expression. You are not only forming correct sentences, but also choosing the right words, creating rhythm, and shaping ideas in ways that capture attention and convey meaning. By practicing across different genres, academic essays, reports, stories, emails, and social posts, you build a versatile and powerful command of English, one that allows you to communicate confidently in any context. Writing at this level is no longer a task. It is a tool for thinking, creating, and connecting with the world through English. At the C2 level, writing is not only for exams or academic purposes. It is also essential in professional contexts. Whether you are at university or at work, you need to write in a way that is clear, logical, and persuasive. This means organizing your ideas carefully. A strong piece of writing has a clear structure, an introduction that sets up the topic and your viewpoint, body paragraphs that explain your ideas with evidence and examples, and a conclusion that summarizes everything and leaves a lasting impression. But structure alone is not enough. At C2, you also need to show critical thinking. This means you don't just repeat information you have read or heard. Instead, you analyze it, compare different perspectives, recognize any limitations, and give your own interpretation. For example, if you are writing about climate change, it's not enough to say simply, "Climate change is a problem." You need to present facts and data, show different viewpoints, consider counterarguments, and then explain why your conclusion makes sense. This depth and reasoning is exactly what academic readers expect at C2. Another key feature of strong academic writing is cohesion. Cohesion is about how your sentences and paragraphs connect to each other so the text flows naturally. At lower levels, you might rely on simple connectors like and, but, so, or because. At C2, you should use a wider range of advanced connectors to show the relationships between ideas. Phrases like on the contrary, in addition, by contrast, to illustrate this point, nevertheless, or with this in mind, give your writing a professional polish and make your arguments easier to follow. Cohesion is not just about words, it is also about rhythm. Mixing long and short sentences and arranging paragraphs so each one naturally follows from the previous makes your writing pleasant and engaging to read. Readers notice this flow. Even if they cannot explain why, it makes your work feel confident and professional. Now, let's move to professional writing, which is just as important at this level. Many of you will use English to write emails, reports, proposals, or create presentations. At C2, professional writing should be precise, clear, and tailored to your audience. You can write polite but firm emails, reports that summarize data and recommendations effectively, or proposals that persuade stakeholders. The same principles of structure, clarity, cohesion, and rhythm apply here, but you also need to adapt your tone. A formal email to a client requires professionalism, whereas an internal report may allow a more conversational tone. The key idea is that C2 writing is versatile. Whether you are producing an academic essay, a business report, or a personal reflection, you combine structure, critical thinking, cohesion, and style. You use advanced vocabulary, accurate grammar, and varied sentence structures to communicate clearly and persuasively. At this stage, writing is no longer just about correctness. It is about effectiveness, elegance, and impact. It is the skill that allows you to express complex ideas, influence readers, and show mastery of English in any context. By practicing both academic and professional writing, you develop a flexible and confident command of English. You learn how to organize your thoughts logically, present arguments persuasively, and adjust your style depending on your purpose and audience. At C2, writing becomes a powerful tool for communication, helping you not only succeed in exams and work, but also think clearly and express yourself with confidence. At the C2 level, professional writing should be clear, polite, and effective. It does not need to be overly complicated, but it should still show sophistication. For example, when writing an email, you do not want to sound too formal and distant, but you also don't want to sound casual or careless. The goal is to strike the right balance between professionalism and friendliness. A good example might be, "I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to follow up on our previous discussion regarding the project timeline. Could you kindly confirm whether the updated schedule works for your team?" This sentence is polite, clear, and professional. At C2, professional writing is often about tone, and you must adjust your tone depending on your audience. You might be more formal when addressing executives, more direct with colleagues, and more persuasive with clients. Learning to adapt your tone shows that you understand both the language and the social expectations behind it. On the other hand, creative writing gives you freedom to play with language, and at C2, you should explore this style confidently. Writing stories, poems, or imaginative essays allows you to experiment with imagery, metaphor, rhythm, and emotion. In creative writing, it is not just what you say, but how you say it. For example, instead of writing, "The sun set and it got dark," you might write, "The sun melted into the horizon, leaving the sky bruised purple and gold, while the first shadows stretched their fingers across the earth." Notice how this sentence uses imagery and rhythm to create a mood. Practicing creative writing strengthens your overall command of English because it makes you more sensitive to style, word choice, and the musicality of language. You also learn how to make your sentences more expressive and engaging. Even in professional or academic writing, this skill is valuable. The ability to write vividly and choose words that resonate makes your work stand out and captures your reader's attention. At C2, one of the greatest challenges is mastering register and style in writing. Register is the level of formality and the type of language suitable for a particular situation. For instance, when texting a friend, you might write casually, using slang or short sentences. In an email to a supervisor, your language would be formal, structured, and polite. In a creative essay, your sentences might be long, flowing, and full of imagery. Being able to move between different registers shows not only fluency, but also cultural and social awareness. Practicing these skills helps you adapt your writing naturally for any context. You develop the ability to decide, for each situation, how formal or informal to be, what tone is appropriate, and what style best communicates your message. At C2, your goal is not just to write correctly, but to write effectively, persuasively, and creatively when needed. The more you practice professional, academic, and creative writing, the more confident and flexible you become. Eventually, you write without thinking about rules, focusing instead on expression, clarity, and impact. Writing at this level combines accuracy with artistry. Whether you are drafting an email, an essay, a report, or a story, your words are chosen carefully to convey meaning, emotion, and authority. At C2, writing is no longer a task or a challenge. It becomes a powerful tool for communication, for influencing others, for telling stories, and for sharing ideas clearly and beautifully in English. When writing at C2, one of the most important skills is adapting your language to the situation, also called register. For example, if you are texting a friend, you might write casually, "Hey, want to grab a coffee later?" But if you're emailing your professor, your message would be more formal and polite. "Would you be available for a meeting later today to discuss the assignment?" Both messages are correct, but the difference is appropriateness. At C2, you should be able to switch smoothly between different registers depending on who you are communicating with. This skill shows that you not only know English grammar and vocabulary, but also understand the social and cultural rules of communication. It demonstrates sophistication and confidence in the language. Another key element of advanced writing is precision. Precision means choosing the exact word that perfectly expresses your meaning. At lower levels, learners often rely on vague words like thing, nice, or bad. At C2, you use sharper, more accurate words. For instance, instead of thing, you might write aspect, factor, element, or component, depending on context. Instead of nice, you might use pleasant, delightful, thoughtful, or generous. Instead of bad, you might say harmful, inadequate, disappointing, or detrimental. Precision makes your writing clear and confident. Readers understand your ideas immediately, without guessing your meaning. Grammar at this level is not just about avoiding mistakes. It is a tool to create style, emphasis, and sophistication. You can use complex structures for effect. For example, inversion for emphasis. Rarely have I seen such dedication. Conditional sentences to explore possibilities. Had the company invested earlier, the results might have been different. Nominalization to sound formal. The implementation of new policies resulted in greater efficiency. These structures give your writing variety, depth, and power. They allow you to move beyond simple sentences and make your text more professional, persuasive, and engaging. But here is a crucial point. Advanced writing is not about making everything complicated. The best writing is often clear, direct, and simple. Complexity should always have a purpose, not just be decoration. If you can express an idea in a short, strong sentence, do it. At C2, you have the flexibility to choose. You can write complex sentences when they add meaning and simple sentences when they make a stronger impact. In summary, writing at the C2 level is about balance. You balance formality and friendliness, clarity and sophistication, simplicity and complexity. You choose the right words, the right grammar, and the right style for each situation. This combination of register, precision, grammar, and clarity is what makes C2 writing truly advanced. When you master these skills, your writing is not just correct, it is effective, elegant, and powerful. At the C2 level, writing is about finding the right balance. You can write long, complex sentences when you need to explain something in detail. At the same time, you can use short, sharp sentences when you want to make an impact. Mixing long and short sentences gives your writing rhythm, clarity, and strength. This balance is one of the things that makes advanced writing truly effective. Another skill that becomes essential at this stage is editing. Excellent writers are not just people who can write well, they are people who rewrite well. After finishing a draft, go back and ask yourself key questions. Is my argument clear? Does the structure make sense? Are my words precise? Are there unnecessary repetitions? Could I make this sentence smoother or more engaging? Editing is where good writing becomes great writing. Even professional authors revise their work many times before it is published. At C2, you should be comfortable revising, improving, and refining your texts until they shine. Writing is also closely connected to other skills. It does not happen in isolation. Reading, listening, and speaking all feed your writing ability. When you read widely, you naturally absorb vocabulary, idioms, expressions, and styles that you can use in your writing. Listening carefully to podcasts, speeches, or conversations helps you notice rhythm, intonation, and phrasing, which you can imitate in writing. Speaking allows you to practice expressing ideas spontaneously, which later helps you write more naturally. So, improving your writing is not just about writing more, it's about feeding your brain with rich English input from all directions. A practical tip for advanced learners is to keep a personal writing practice. This could be a journal, essays, blog posts, or even social media posts in English. The key is to make writing a daily habit. Don't wait for assignments, exams, or deadlines. Write for yourself. Write about your day, your thoughts, your opinions, your dreams, or ideas that excite you. Over time, you will notice patterns in your writing. You may realize you use certain words too often, rely on certain sentence structures, or miss opportunities to make your writing more vivid. This self-awareness is essential for mastering C2 writing. Finally, remember that writing is not just about producing correct sentences. Writing is about connection. Whether you are writing an academic essay, a professional report, or a story, your goal is to communicate with real people. You want your ideas to be clear, persuasive, and engaging. You want readers to understand your perspective and feel your message. At C2, your writing should combine clarity, style, and precision. You should be able to move between formal and informal registers, long and short sentences, complex arguments, and simple, impactful statements. You should also be able to revise, edit, and improve your work until it fully expresses what you want to say. In short, C2 writing is flexible, thoughtful, and polished. It grows from reading, listening, and speaking. It improves with daily practice and careful editing. And most importantly, it connects you to your readers, allowing you to communicate ideas effectively, elegantly, and confidently. Writing at this level is not just a skill, it is a way to express yourself fully in English. At the C2 level, whether you are writing an academic essay, a professional report, or a personal story, your main goal is always to connect with the reader. Writing is not about showing off your English skills. It is about communicating something meaningful. When your writing has purpose, it becomes stronger, clearer, and more engaging. This is the difference between writing that is only correct and writing that is truly powerful. As you continue your journey, try to see writing as more than a duty. Think of it as an art, a craft, or a way to shape your thoughts and share them with the world. The more you practice, the more precise, creative, and confident your writing becomes. Eventually, English stops being just a tool. It becomes a voice, a pen, a canvas, and you gain the ability to express yourself fully and freely. That is the real beauty of writing at C2 and the skill that will make your English truly advanced. However, mastering C2 English is not only about skill. It's also about mindset and learning strategies. At this level, the biggest challenges are no longer grammar exercises, vocabulary lists, or textbook activities. The main challenges are motivation, consistency, and self-discipline. Earlier in your learning, you may have had teachers, assignments, exams, or textbooks guiding you. At C2, you are in charge of your own learning. You must decide what to read, what to listen to, how to practice, and how to improve. This independence is powerful, but it can also feel overwhelming if you don't have the right mindset. Developing a strong mindset is crucial because it keeps you moving forward, keeps you curious, and helps you avoid the plateau that many advanced learners face. The plateau is when you feel like your English is no longer improving. You might notice that you understand everything, but you don't see progress in speaking, writing, or thinking in English. This can be discouraging, and many learners stop at this stage. But hitting a plateau is normal. It's a sign that you need to push yourself in new ways, try new methods, and stay consistent. One strategy to overcome plateaus is to set clear, achievable goals. Instead of vague goals like, I want to get better at English, focus on specific, measurable objectives. For example, I will read one English article per day and summarize it in my own words, or I will record a 2-minute speech every morning and analyze my fluency and pronunciation. Small, regular actions like these compound over time, helping you break through plateaus. Another key element is variety in learning. At this level, repeating the same exercises won't lead to growth. Mix different types of activities. Listen to podcasts, read novels, write stories, debate ideas with friends, practice shadowing, learn idioms, and experiment with tone and style. The variety challenges your brain and keeps learning interesting. Finally, remember that self-motivation and curiosity are what sustains C2 learners. No one will push you every day, and you are responsible for creating your own progress. Embrace the challenge, explore new areas, and stay hungry for improvement. With the right mindset, dedication, and creativity, you will continue to grow, and English will become not just a skill, but a part of who you are. When you start learning English, progress feels exciting and obvious. Every new word you learn feels like a win. Every new grammar rule you understand feels like a breakthrough. You can see yourself improving week by week, and it motivates you to keep going. But when you reach the C2 level, learning starts to feel different. Progress becomes subtle. You already understand movies, follow conversations, and read books in English. The changes you make now are smaller and harder to notice. They happen in details. Choosing the perfect word, speaking with smooth intonation, or writing in a sophisticated, polished way. These improvements are real, but they are gradual, and that can make you feel like you are stuck. The truth is, you are not stuck. You are refining your skills. Refinement is slow, but it is what separates advanced learners from true masters. Even if the growth is invisible to you, it is happening. Every time you challenge yourself with complex texts, tricky conversations, or creative writing, your English improves. You just need patience and consistency. At this stage, motivation is key, but it can be hard to maintain when progress feels slow. One way to stay motivated is to focus on goals that matter to your life, not just language exercises. Instead of saying, "I want to learn 50 new words this week," you could say, "I want to read this interesting novel in English and be able to talk about it with a friend." Instead of saying, "I want to speak for 20 minutes today," you could say, "I want to tell the story of my childhood in English and make it feel real and emotional." Goals like these are meaningful, and meaningful goals give you energy and purpose. At the C2 level, you are not learning English just to pass exams. You are learning to live in English, to think in English, and to connect with people through it. Motivation alone is not enough because it comes and goes. That's where discipline becomes essential. Discipline is about building habits that make English a natural part of your daily life. For example, you might read a few pages of a book every night before bed, listen to a podcast while making breakfast, or write a journal entry in English before sleeping. Discipline is what keeps you moving even when you don't feel motivated. It is the steady rhythm that turns learning into progress. At this level, it is also important to challenge yourself continuously. Read texts that push your understanding, watch shows or podcasts that feel slightly too fast, and try speaking or writing about ideas that are complex or abstract. Each time you do this, your skills grow, even if it is hard to notice day by day. Another way to stay engaged is to connect your English learning to your personal life. If you enjoy cooking, read recipes, or watch cooking shows in English. If you like history, explore documentaries or books about historical events. If you love storytelling, try writing your own stories or discussing novels in English with friends. By making English part of your passions, learning becomes more enjoyable and progress feels natural. In short, at C2, learning English is less about obvious achievements and more about refinement, patience, and meaningful practice. Keep setting life-centered goals, stay disciplined with your habits, challenge yourself regularly, and connect learning to your interests. Even if the growth is subtle, it is real, and over time, your English will reach a level where it feels completely natural, precise, and powerful. At the C2 level, habits are more important than long study sessions. You might journal in English every morning for 10 minutes, listen to a podcast while cooking, or read a few pages of a book before bed. These small daily habits may seem minor, but over months and years, they are what keep your English sharp and growing. The best part is that once habits are established, they work automatically. You don't need to push yourself constantly. They run on autopilot. This is why at advanced levels, it's better to focus on consistent, manageable routines than dramatic bursts of study. Another important quality at C2 is autonomy. Autonomy means taking responsibility for your own learning. You don't wait for a teacher, a textbook, or an exam to guide you. Instead, you notice your own strengths and weaknesses and design your own practice. For example, you might realize that you understand academic English perfectly, but casual, everyday English or slang is hard. Instead of waiting for someone to assign lessons, you could watch sitcoms, listen to YouTube creators, or join casual conversations online. If your writing is strong but your speaking feels stiff, you can create opportunities for spontaneous speech, join live discussions, participate in debates, or even record yourself talking about daily events. This self-directed approach ensures that your skills continue improving long after formal classes are over. At this stage, you also need to change how you view mistakes. Many advanced learners become perfectionists. They hesitate to speak unless they sound flawless. They hold back writing unless every sentence is perfect, and they avoid sharing ideas unless the grammar is correct. This fear of mistakes slows progress because it stops you from trying new things. But the truth is, even at C2, mistakes will happen. That's normal. Mistakes show that you are exploring new language and pushing your boundaries. The goal is not to speak without errors. The goal is to communicate confidently and keep learning. If you embrace mistakes as part of growth, you stay motivated instead of discouraged. At this level, learning is less about chasing perfection and more about learning to communicate freely, effectively, and naturally. You should be able to speak without constantly thinking about grammar, write with clarity and style, and read and understand complex texts with ease. To achieve this, your habits, autonomy, and mindset are just as important as vocabulary or grammar. Daily practice, self-directed learning, and fearlessness in making mistakes create steady improvement. They allow you to refine your skills over time, moving from correct English to truly fluent, natural, and confident English. Remember, C2 is not about dramatic leaps in learning. Progress is subtle and continuous. The words you choose, the rhythm of your speech, the style of your writing, and the flexibility of your thinking all improve gradually. Habits, self-directed practice, and embracing mistakes are the tools that make this growth possible. Over time, these strategies ensure that English becomes part of your life, not just something you study. You stop thinking about the rules and start using the language freely and creatively. You start living in English, thinking in English, and expressing yourself confidently. That is what makes C2 different from earlier levels. At this stage, mastery is not about knowledge. It's about consistency, courage, and independence in learning.